This is saying, no, you don't have my permission to treat me like this and walk away from it. You don't have permission to rape me emotionally and walk away from it. You don't have the right to take another person's life, physically, emotionally, mentally. You don't have that right. Nobody has that right.
More than 30 years ago, amid the rugged, windswept beauty of Carmel, California, a tiny child may have seen something. Something no child should see. A vision so monstrous that for years it was exiled to the dimly lit dungeon known as the human subconscious.
It's like a TV in my head and I cannot turn it off. All you can see is that screen. And all of a sudden, it's like the 33-year-old woman is watching through the height and eyes of a little 3-year-old child.
But in the eyes of that child, it was much more than just a movie. It may have been murder. A vicious late-night slaughter that now sounds like something from a film by Alfred Hitchcock. And this story does have its ties to the silver screen. For once upon a time, there was an actress named Clara Moore. In the 1920s, she danced with the legendary Rudolph Valentino. She also played opposite Al Jolson in a movie called The Jazz Singer. But Clara Moore's most dramatic role would come much later in life, on a rainy night in 1959 when she was brutally murdered in her Carmel home. Her next-door neighbor at the time was a small child named Markley Ann Johnston. And 31 years to the day after the actress was savagely slain, Johnston says she suddenly had a flashback, that she was there, and she saw it all.
I've walked around for years wondering if I was sane. I hate them for what they took away from me. I hate them for hurting my friend. I had suppressed it for 31 years. And in a counseling session, it came back. The memory of the murder came back.
And if what Johnston now says is true, it's a memory that could lead to murder charges in a crime that's more than 3 decades old. A scenario strikingly similar to the recent murder conviction of California firefighter George Franklin. Franklin has been sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars after his grown daughter had a flashback that more than 20 years ago, she witnessed her dad murdering a young neighborhood friend.
Nobody deserves to feel that kind of terror. Nobody deserves to walk around for years not knowing who they are they really real, and not being able to feel the real world like everybody else gets to. Because I couldn't. Because the real world was too scary.
And according to Johnston, in this exclusive interview with A Current Affair, her long-forgotten memory begins late one night when, as a 3-year-old, she's awakened by noises coming from next door.
I was a very curious, obnoxious little kid who loved to go check things out, so I did. And I went next door. They were obviously fighting. And I went around to the front, and it was open. The door was opened. And I went in, and there was the body on the floor. It was Clara Moore's body, partially disemboweled. I went to the body. I thought it was a doll. I thought there was a doll on the floor. I wasn't sure what was on the floor. She made noises when I touched her stab wounds. And I don't know what brought the people in from the other room, but the woman came in and saw me and just flipped right out. She grabbed me from behind, and she informed me that I was a very bad girl for going into people's houses without knocking.
And Johnston says that same woman and a male companion then proceeded to finish off actress Clara Moore, all the while tormenting the frightened 3-year-old intruder.
Plain and simple, they butchered her. And they used me. The woman made it very clear that what had happened to Clara would happen to my mother. She shoved my face into the body cavity to drive her point home. And I remember what it tasted like, and I remember what it smelled like, and I remember how I couldn't breathe. And I was bathed afterwards. My nightgown at one point had been taken off of me. And I was bathed at one point.
Why would they bathe you?
I was a mess. Blood. There was body tissue on me. I was redressed. I was carried over and put back on my lawn. and he told me to go home, go back to bed. Don't say anything. And I remember crawling into bed with my mom, and I remember thinking to myself, my mommy's alive, my mommy's warm, and my mommy's here. I can go to sleep now. And I went to sleep.
And according to Mark Leanne, so too did her memory of that night. That is until 31 years later, during a therapy session, when it all came rushing back, in such vivid detail that Johnston's startled therapist felt compelled to notify the Monterey County Sheriff, who then sent an investigator to talk with Mark Leanne Johnston.
I do not have any doubt in my mind as to who I saw doing what that night.
The fact is, she knew her stuff. She knew where the wounds were. She knew the suspects.
Author Ryder McDowell has been investigating Mark Leanne's story for months and has written about it in this month's California magazine. He says it's a convincing story.
Unless you had access to the autopsy report, you wouldn't know what she knew. Mark Leanne certainly believes she was there and saw what she saw. And given the evidence, I believe that she witnessed this.
I pinned them.
You were shown some photographs.
And I nailed them right then and there, and I knew exactly who they were, and I did not have to hesitate. And after I ID'd them, I got up and I threw up.
And the man and woman who Johnston identified for police were the brother and sister-in-law of actress Clara Moore, Carl and Marion Lorsch. 31 years ago, the couple was questioned about the killing because of long-standing rumors of family bad blood. But at the time, neither was seriously considered a suspect. Carl Lorsch died last year, but his 86-year-old wife, Marion, is still living in the couple's Arizona home, where we tried to talk to her about the accusations of Mark Leanne Johnston.
Okay, ma'am, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Marion Lorsch refused to talk to A Current Affair, as did her attorney. But he did tell us the accusations of Mark Leanne Johnston are completely untrue, a sentiment shared by many of Marion Lorsch's neighbors, who say the sweet woman they know could not have committed murder.
She's very, very kind, and ever since she's been here, I've known her for 24 years, and she's a lovely, caring person.
She said she did not do this.
Very much so. She says, between me and God, he knows I did not do that.
Well then, what do you think is motivating this young woman to make these kind of allegations?
I can't understand, except that she must have psychiatric problems.
I'm not a kook, not anymore. I have paid my price.
The woman that you're accusing of committing this murder says that you're a liar. She says that you're not a balanced young woman and that you're now lying about this. You know that.
I don't care. It's not right. Charlie Manson's behind bars because of what he did. Society says this isn't something that's acceptable. She does not deserve freedom.
Exactly what happened in this house more than 30 years ago may never be known. And with the passage of so much time, it's doubtful whether justice can really be done. But local police consider the story of Mark Leanne Johnston sufficiently interesting that they've now launched their own investigation. An investigation based solely on the memory of a child. A horrible memory locked away for better than 3 decades.
We've done a complete investigation, and now it's up to the district attorney to find out if it should be filed.
I don't think the sheriff's department would waste its time with something that, unless there was enough evidence to bring it from, step to step.
And the next step for Mark Leanne Johnston is to await the decision of the district attorney on whether or not he'll prosecute. Although Johnston may have already done damage to her own case by recently hiring a press agent and actively shopping her story as a movie deal.
I did nothing wrong. I was an inquisitive little kid who wound up at the wrong place at the right time. And in a way, if I hadn't have been there, even though it is 30 years later, Clara never would have been able to be vindicated.